I have a rhetorical question for everyone who was born and raised in northern Kent County area, because I was not. And sometimes I don't understand the culture here really at all. I never understood, and I'm going to call it the 15th of November itch. Does anybody have the 15th of November itch? It's that feeling people have around this time of year where they just got to kill me some deer. You know what I'm talking about? I would tell people when I'd come to Kent City, I'd say, "Did you catch any deer?" And man, don't say that to anybody. What'd you just say? Well, did you catch some deer? You don't catch deer. What do you think? I hide up in a tree and jump out and grab a deer? I kill me some deer is what I do. So here's my question. It's rhetorical. Is it okay for Christian hunters to say what happens at deer camp should stay at deer camp? Ooh, this is rhetorical, Nate. It's rhetorical. Okay, Nate, second question. This will be harder. Are you ready? Is it okay, because I've heard that sentiment over the years, but I've also heard that same sentiment from groups of women that kind of talk about the same thing on Black Friday, where they will go early in the morning, wee hours of the morning, spend like crazy, go to the local watering hole, get some wine, clink their glasses, and say, "You go, girl. We're living it up. We're living it up." Answer that one, Nate. Is that okay? Okay. So my question, based on these two rhetorical questions, is it okay as Christians to just live like the culture we're immersed in, or should we be different? And the reason I ask that is because this whole chapter we're going to go into is very, very clear. I can hear some of the guys at the deer camp, or a few of the ladies at the bar saying, "Lighten up, Pastor, relax. We all sin, we're all sinners. So ease off the guilt, ease off the self-righteous religiosity, because, girls just want to have fun. Just want to have fun." But I will say, my dear brothers and sisters, I am going to ask you not to write off my questions and concerns, but to hear me out. And don't forget what Peter Parker's uncle once said. Remember what Peter Parker's uncle once said? With great power comes great responsibility. And this is really the theme, and I'm going to title this study in Ephesians, we have to learn Spidey Spirituality. With great power comes great responsibility. Open up to Ephesians 3 and let me show you how Paul's writing flows. What you need to understand, the Bible didn't come to us in English, number one. Do you know that? New Testament was written in Greek mostly. Actually, the New Testament Gospel's Aramaic. They turned everything into Greek. Greek language doesn't necessarily at the time of the writing have chapters and verses. It was all linked together. And in our minds, sometimes we forget that. And if you look at chapter 3, in verse 17, it's linked directly to chapter 4. And watch what I mean. So, look at verse 17 in the middle of it. Paul is writing to us, and this is what we studied last week. "I pray that you, Christian, being rooted and established in love, may have power." Power, that means God's strength, together with all the Lord's people to grasp how wide and long and high and deep is the love of Christ. And to know this love, not just intellectually, but experientially. To know this love that surpasses knowledge, that you may be filled to the full measure of the fullness of God, which is incredible. Now look at verse 20. "Now to him who is able to do immeasurably more than we ask or imagine, according to his power that works in us." So this is the first part of "with great power." Now we come to verse 4, or chapter 4, verse 1. "As a prisoner for the Lord, then," or therefore, everything that came in chapter 3, I urge you to live a life worthy of the calling you've received, with great power should come great responsibility, or because of what God has poured into you should come a life that is obvious. I want to talk about the structure of Ephesians for a second, the way Paul put this together, and I want to bring up a story you're probably very familiar with. It's the story of the Transfiguration. So Mount Tabor is a real mountain in Judea. And in the book of Luke, chapter 9, Jesus took James, Peter, and John up the mountain to the very top. As they climbed, he said, basically, you're going to see the kingdom of heaven. Right before that, he said, some of you will be alive and you'll see the kingdom of heaven. And he was going to give them a slight glimpse of glory. While he was up there, Luke writes, Jesus' clothes became as bright as flashes of lightning. What would that look like? And then it said, right next to Jesus, Moses appeared and Elijah appeared. And then God spoke out of heaven and said, this is my son whom I've chosen, listen to him. That's amazing stuff. Like if you can grasp your mind around that, even Peter in 1 Peter said, I saw and heard the Lord with my eyes and heard him with my ears. Wow. Later in the story, it says Peter was in such awe, he wanted to build 3 shrines, one for Moses, one for Elijah, and one for Jesus, kind of like temples. He probably wanted to build a cathedral full of stained glass so people could go up the mountain and bask in the glory of God shining through to remember that day. People do this all the time. I grew up in a denomination. Everywhere you go, they got to do a shrine. Go to Jerusalem, they'll have a shrine where Jesus was born. They'll have a shrine in the Garden of Gethsemane. Everything's a shrine. They want to build a temple with human hands. Well, guess what? In this story, Jesus didn't let them camp there. In fact, the very next day, he went down the other side of the mountain into the city to minister, and the very first person that came up to them was a dad who brought his boy who was foaming at the mouth, screaming, and had convulsions. And Jesus said, Don't you guys know what I taught you? Cast out the demons. And Jesus cast out the demons. He goes, oh, you of little faith. And he's sort of upset that here are these disciples basking in glory, but they got nothing to offer. And Ephesians is set up exactly the same way. Chapter 1 through 3, he had us go up the mountains of glory like crazy. Go to chapter 1. I'll show you just 3 incidents. Chapter 1, verse 3 and 4. Right when you start walking on this mountain of Ephesians, he says, praise be to the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, who's blessed us in the heavenly realms with every spiritual blessing in Christ, for he chose us in him before the creation of the world to be holy and blameless. Like, that's mind-blowing. I still don't understand that fully, but I love it. And then if you go to chapter 2, look at chapter 2, verse 6. And we're going up the mountain a little bit more. And God raised us up with Christ. Who? Believers. We are raised up with Christ. He seated us with him where? In the heavenly realms in Christ Jesus. What? Yes. If you believe in Jesus, you are positionally with Christ in heaven right now. That's mind-blowing. And then take a look at chapter 3, 10 and 11. Chapter 3, 10 and 11. His intent, means the Father's intent, was that right now, through the church, through us, the manifold wisdom of God, that means the many-colored brilliance of God, should be made known to the rulers and authorities. Those are angels and demons. He's using the church to show off to angels and demons. Verse 11, according to his eternal purpose that he accomplished in Christ Jesus our Lord. We are getting to the top of the Mount Transfiguration, and it ends in chapter 3, verse 17, where it says, you may have the power to grasp how wide and long and high and deep is the love of Christ. That is glory right there. So I want to stay up there. I could sing of his love forever. Let's sing that song. I could sing of his love forever. That song goes on forever. Over the mountains and the sea. That song? It's an old 80s song. If you don't know it, too bad. It's brilliant. But I could sing of his love forever up there. And then the book of Ephesians said, guess what? It's time to come back down the mountain. Look at chapter 4, verse 1. As a prisoner for the Lord. Ooh, Paul's a prisoner for the Lord for this stuff? Then, or therefore, or because of chapter 3, as a prisoner for the Lord, I urge you to now live a life worthy of the calling you've received. Start doing this. We're going down the mountain to live a real life. One writer says, if we've really been grasping the great doctrines of the first 3 chapters, we are not to call a halt. Don't just stop. We are to go to the practical life and living, to the ordinary, day-to-day application of basic Christian doctrine. It is a glorious experience to be on top of the mountain. It is. But we must go down to the valleys, to all the problems of daily life and living. Another writer says this, from the man who has, much is expected. To whom much has been given, much is also expected. Or, again, as Uncle Ben said, with great power comes great responsibility, Spidey. So, we're going to begin with a guiding principle. I believe verse 1 of chapter 4 is a overarching umbrella guiding principle that the rest of Ephesians is going to come underneath. It's a general principle that will lead to specific behavior. So what's the general principle? As a prisoner for the Lord, I urge you to live, and this is the key part, a life worthy of your calling. A life worthy of your calling. ESV says, I therefore, a prisoner of the Lord, urge you to walk in a manner of the calling you've been called. The Message writes it like this. In light of all of this, meaning chapters 1 through 3, here's what I want you to do. While I'm locked up here, a prisoner for the master, I want you to get out there and walk. Better yet, run. On the road God called you to travel, I don't want any of you sitting around on your hands. I don't want anyone strolling off down some path that goes nowhere. Paul is forcing us to focus on real life. He's going to take some facts that are concerning chapters 1 through 3, and he's going to apply it to real life. And he first of all begins by talking about our condition. You are, if you believe chapters 1 through 3, you are, according to this verse, number 1, you are free to live this life. Look at what he says in verse 1. As a prisoner for the Lord, I urge you to live a life worthy. You are free. You could say it like this. Paul is stuck in jail. Paul wants to be out of chains so he can declare the gospel because he's driven by it, but he's stuck in there, and he often says, I'm in chains so you can be free. I suffer so you don't have to. In other words, you could say what Paul would give to get out of those chains. And if he was out of those chains, man, he would just go and tell. And he says, but guess what? You can go. You can tell. The world is your oyster. I like to look at it like this. I love coaching rocket football. That's where the little kids put on these helmets and shoulder pads. They look like weeble wobbles. You knock them down and they hit their head and bounce back up. But when you teach these kids, they put on the pads and they walk around like this and they tackle and they're like, oh, I hate this. I want to go home and play some Game Boy or something, you know. And the coaches on rocket usually are has-beens, guys that live in the glory days, and they want to play. They're like, if you kids understood what I'd give to hit a guy again, right, TJ? If I could put those pads on one more time. Man, I would just love to be back in pads. So what they're saying is you guys have the chance to do something I love to do. And what Paul is saying, you guys have a chance to live the gospel. I'm in chains. You're free. Or look at it like this. Last week, my sister died. For 63 years, my sister could not feed herself, dress herself. She couldn't walk. My mom had to do everything for her. When I was in 5th grade, I had to, over the summers, stay home with my sister to feed her lunch and sometimes dinner because my mom worked. Stephanie would trade off with me. And sometimes when I'd be feeding my sister, I often would feed her like these pieces of hot dogs, and I'd feed my sister's hot dog, and she'd bite my hand. And I'd go, Laura, stop it! And then Mom would come home, and I'd say, I hate feeding Laura, Mom. I hate it. She'll bite my hand and drool all over me. And I got to be stuck at home with her. I want to go to the beach. And my mom looks at me. She goes, don't you think she would like to go to the beach sometime? She never can go to the beach. Don't you think she would like to feed herself? What are you complaining about? You got the world. What are we complaining about? We're not stuck in prison. We aren't repressed in the United States. We are free. And our freedom is meant to let us live fully. I like what one writer said, you know what the glory of God is? It's a man fully alive. Why are we so depressed? We've been given a world. Second thing is we are empowered by God himself. We just got done talking about this in chapter 3 and chapter 2 and chapter 1. We're sealed with the Holy Spirit. We have access by prayer to all of God's riches. We've been given the available means to glorify God in our inner self and in our life. We can know the love of God. And God opens our mind through the Holy Spirit to understand the world. In a way, we've been given spidey sense that the non-Christian does not have. When I first was saved, I wanted to know this book. I want to know the Bible. So I got saved and I went to the local Christian bookstore and I found a really thick Bible because I thought a really thick Bible would have the truth, but I found out it was so thick because it was written for blind people. The words were huge. Like it doesn't matter how big a Bible is or not. And I'm reading this Bible, and I open it up on I turn on my car radio, and on my car radio, I like to listen to J. Vernon McGee. If you know who J. Vernon McGee is, I talk about, he's an old-timer kind of talk like this. He says, my dearly beloved, today, and then he goes, I want you to open up to Romans chapter 1. Go to Romans chapter 1 a second. And he said, I want to show you Romans chapter 1. And this is the very first thing, like my new Bible I'm looking at. He goes, I'm going to explain to you in a minute what's wrong with the world. Oh, I'm like, come on. You can't explain to me what's wrong with the world. So he starts in verse 18, chapter 1 of Romans. It says, the wrath of God is being revealed from heaven against all the godlessness and wickedness of men who suppress the truth by their wickedness. He goes, you read that? People are given the truth, but they suppress it. They don't want it. They don't listen to it. In verse 21, it says the same thing. Although they knew God, they neither glorified him as God nor gave thanks to him. They're like, see, they don't want God. And then he says, look at verse 24. This is what's wrong with the world. Because they were given the truth and they don't want the truth, God gives them over to themselves. Verse 24. Therefore, God gave them over to their sinful desires of their hearts, to sexual impurity for the degrading of their bodies with one another. They exchanged the truth of God for a lie. And he goes, that's what's wrong with our world. And in 1 minute, I'm like, my eyes are open. Oh! This is what psychologists and philosophers have been writing about for centuries, and he just explained it to me in less than 2 to 3 minutes. I have spidey sense. I can see things people can't. So can you. You are given the ability to understand why you're on this earth, what your purpose is, what the problem with our world is, and how you're set free from sin. You have all the answers. I can remember my wife and I, we were in Russia. My wife had all these Russian ladies come over. She goes, what do I teach them? She goes, I said, Michelle, they've never read the Bible. You have. That night, she taught them about Jesus died, rose again. And they said, he did what? Yeah, he rose again. So my wife's teaching about the resurrection. And she said they were enthralled by the resurrection because they never heard it before. You have. You're given spidey sense. It's incredible. Third thing also, you are called. Go back to Ephesians. It says, I urge you to live a life worthy the calling you've received. The word church means called out ones. Ecclesia, that's a Greek word for those who are called out. So this church, this body means you have been snatched out. One writer says, we've been plucked out of darkness and brought into his marvelous light. We have been lost and now we're found. We were dead and now we're alive. We were blind and now we can see. We've been called. I think one of the most inspiring verses is Galatians 1:15. You don't have to turn there, but listen to what it says. It says, before I was born, God chose me and called me by his marvelous grace because it pleased him to reveal his Son in me. He called me so he could reveal his Son in me, so he could have Jesus show off in my life. So imagine we now have Trump in office and he calls you up and he says, hey, I would like you to be in my cabinet. I want you to be in charge of whatever So Jerry, I want you to be in charge of buffing cars and, for the United States. But Jerry'd go, the president called me and he wants me to work for him. And I'd say, come on, no way. No, really. Show me the text and go, wow, that's incredible. The creator of the universe wants me to work for him. The creator of Orion and the Teton Mountains and the little bitty baby that comes out of the nursery wants you to work for him. You're called. That's incredible. The Message writes, Galatians 1:15, he chose and called me out of sheer generosity. Now he has intervened and revealed his Son in me and to me so I might joyfully tell those who don't believe. So, for the Christian, this is who we are. Now, because this is who we are, this is what we should do. Very simple. Walk worthy. Since all these things in this moment are true, Paul is saying it's time to live up to your calling. 1 Peter writes, you are a chosen people. You're a royal priesthood. You are a holy nation. You're God's special possession, that you may declare the praises of him who called you out of darkness into his wonderful light. Therefore, walk worthy. This is a very interesting word, very interesting concept, and it kind of reflects two things. The word worthy in this context of chapter 4, verse 1, means you need to live of equal weight to what you've received. So, like a balance. So this is a balance, and let's say I put some gold nuggets on this end, and it goes like that. On this end, I put some weights to figure out how many ounces. So let's say I've got like 10 ounces. I'll put 1 ounce, 2 ounce, 3 ounce, 4 ounce, 10 ounces. That shows worth, or my action should be of equal measure to what I've received. So Paul is saying, chapters 1 through 3, how do you value its weight? So you go like this. You say, how big of a deal is it to have the Holy Spirit to be sealed in you? Kind of heavy, kind of big deal. How big of a deal is it to know the love of God? And you can pray for that he would do amazingly, abundantly above anything you ask for. That's heavy. Okay, live like it. Get out of the porn. Stop getting drunk. Stop complaining. Live worthy of the weightiness God gave you. That is crazy big. That's huge. Dr. Lloyd Jones writes, however packed your head may be full of knowledge, like a lot of people like knowledge, put it in there, pack it up. I've read 400,000 books. However packed your head may be full of knowledge, if you are failing in your life, you will be a hindrance to spreading that knowledge about his kingdom. you will bring the cause of God and his Christ into disrepute. You can know everything, but if you don't do it, it's not worth anything. So, if your life is not lived with honor, why should people honor the light of the truth of the knowledge that you've been given? Jesus says it like this, very simply. Jesus says massive things so simply. John 13:17. Now that you know these things, you'll be blessed if you do them. You will bring glory to God if you do them. If you know these things, you will be blessed if you do them. That's one idea of worthy. Another idea of worthy means to match. Your life should match your belief. One author said it's the idea of how some people view their wardrobe. Some people lack in taste. Have you ever met that person who lacks in taste of their clothes? Let's say, do you ever have a son that will wear like a Hawaiian shirt, green, orange, with purple shorts, white socks, and black shoes? It doesn't match. You know? Or you go to a funeral and you wear a swimsuit and sandals to a funeral. It's not matching. It's not matching. One person said, there's those people who never seem to dress appropriately for the right situations. And they continue, and this was written back in the 70s. I don't think you can write this anymore. There's nothing quite so ridiculous as to see an elderly person dressing as if they were 15 years old. You could say it like this. Could you imagine going to a bank teller and you have a 45-year-old bank teller, a guy who's dressed up like a fairy princess who wants to do your banking? Now we're not allowed to say anything about it, but I don't know if I want to go to that teller. Like, what are they going to do with, where's your money? I'm like, what is this? Can you be serious? So in a way, your life should match what you believe. If I am called to look like Christ, the King, and I'm his brother, I should look like a prince with honor. I should. And not a guy who's always got a hangover. Or bitter old person who's always mad. So what happened, this is the guiding principle. The guiding principle is, because these things are true of you, now it's your turn to walk worthy. And now from verse 2 through really the rest of the book of Ephesians, he's going to give practical applications. He's going to get very specific with what I would call imperatives. What are imperatives? Imperatives are commands. If this is true, then do this. Look at verse 2. He uses the word be. Be, we'll talk about what he says you need to be, but this is what you should be. He says it twice, be completely humble. Then he says, be patient. Then he says, bear with one another in love. Look at the phrasing in verse 3. Make every effort. So what he's going to do, everything changes. Chapters 1 through 3, he talked about what things are like. Chapters 4 through 6, now do it. Now do it. I would put it like this. If his life is really in you, like really in you, that means you are sealed with the Holy Spirit. You are made alive with Christ. You are strengthened with power in your inner being. You are established in the Father's love. And as a result, the rest of living will be easy. In fact, you will no longer see life as have to, but you get to. Like you never... I'll go to my A slide. My A slide isn't controversial. My A slide is very... this is more of a theological discussion that I've had with a number of people. When you are a theological teacher, there's a fine line about teaching what are called imperatives, commands. You need to do this, because some people said commands are teaching the law, not grace. So you could say it like this. There's a deep fear among some Christian teachers that telling people to live by imperatives is asking people to live under the law. I actually got into a dispute with a pastor from a different denomination 2 years ago. He saw what I was putting on my Facebook. He personal messaged me, and he said that I was teaching decision theology. I was pushing works righteousness instead of just letting people live by faith. He was accusing me of guilting people into living a life of works. because I would say you need to do this, you need to do that. But what Paul is saying here, if you read correctly, if you believe chapters 1 through 3, it should compel you to live for Christ right now in the best way that you can. It is not about condemnation, you better obey or else. It's about ability. We now can, so let's do it. Let me show you what I mean. Go to the book of John. Book of John, chapter 14. John 14, 23. It's a beautiful verse, but very controversial. Don't you love a good mug? Oh. It's only water, though, but if I had coffee in here, it'd be sheer delight, Chris. Thank you for the mug. So look at John 14, 23. Jesus replied, "Anyone who loves me will obey my teaching. My Father will love them, and we will come to them and make our home with them." Some verses say, if you love me, you'll obey my teaching. Now, it used to be taught like this: if you love me, you'll obey me. See what I'm saying? Do you love me? It's kind of like an old mom going, "Son, if you love me, you'll pick up your bedroom." You know what? You didn't pick up your bedroom, so you must not love me. It's not like that. That's not how it's written. To be very intellectual here, the phrase right here, "anyone who loves me," is written in let me get it right. It's written in it's an present, active, subjunctive tense. Isn't that impressive? What that means is in the present, if I love him in the present, subjective tense mean in the future I will obey. If I love him, like really love him, I will do it. I will want to do it. Your current state will drive your future acts. If you love God, you'll want to obey him. That's the idea. So if all of chapters 1 through 3 are true, like if they're really true, and to me, the hard part isn't 4 through 6, it's understanding 1 through 3, ingesting in it, believing it. If I believe it, chapters 4 through 6 will be easy, and you'll love it, and you will just do it. Okay, so if you agree with that, so far do you agree with what I'm saying? That's kind of what Paul's writing. Tom, do you agree he's saying that? All right, so Tom gave me permission to continue on, because it's going to get rocky. So, if I'm to live a life worthy of the calling I've received, I go back to Ephesians chapter 4. I turn the Bible very slowly. I go to chapter 1. I let it sink in. As a prisoner for the Lord, I urge you to live a life worthy of the calling you've received. Okay, I get that. I'm ready to go. Are you ready to go? Yes. Be completely humble and gentle. What? I like to be a jerk. I like to be right all the time. I like to take my frustration out on people. I got to be kind. I'm not a kind person. Why do Christians adopt labels of things? I don't have to be kind because I'm not a kind person. Oh, then what you're telling me, you really don't believe chapters 1 through 3 that you now are sitting at the right hand with the Son of the Father, and that the love of God has been poured apart in your heart, and you have the ability to know his love, but you don't have to be kind and humble. Why? Because you're special? Yeah, I don't have to do the rest of the Bible. Everybody else does, but not me. My old self never wanted to be kind. Really didn't want to, but getting Jesus' glory in my life is at stake. Jesus being seen in my life is at stake. Have you ever met that stubborn Christian even that says, "I don't want to read the Bible because I'm not a reader"? What does that mean? I'm just not a reader, so I don't have to read. Oh, you don't have to do what God wants. Why? Because that's who I am. Then you are not humble, you're not gentle. And then keep reading. Look at the rest of verse 2. It gets worse. Be patient, bearing with one another in love. But I don't like people. They insult me all the time. Keep reading. Make every effort to keep the unity of the Spirit through the bond of peace. Chris, that's just so hard. And what we do is we try to, what's the Greek mean there? No, you know what this is saying. The hard part is understanding 1 through 3. Once you get it, will you do the rest of this? Make every effort to keep the unity of the Spirit through the bond of peace. Some of you just don't like people. Why? Because I'm Dutch. I'm Dutch. Because I'm Dutch, I don't have to like anybody. And you get your hands off my money, I'm Dutch. Oh, Chris, don't say that. Well, I'm Polish Italian. I can't keep my mouth shut, so that's my problem. But I got to be completely humble and gentle, bearing with one another in love. Why? Because of everything that came before. See, because I could go through the rest of this and give you practical advice, but if you read these things, it's so clear. It's so clear. Like, look at verse 4. There's one body, one Spirit, just as you were called to one hope when you were called, one Lord, one faith, one baptism, one God, one Father of all, who's over all and through all. That's why we need to make every effort to keep unity, because we're all part of each other. Oh, okay. I'll be humble and gentle about it. I agree to that. Just do it. You just do it. And what we're going to see the rest of Ephesians is all about doing and changing your life so God would be in your life and be worthy of the calling you've received. I'll finish with this illustration. This is 1987. This was my rugby team. I'm right there. See my nice 80s hair, a little puffy? It's because I use Suave, you know, that dollar Suave. Didn't use conditioner back in the day. Anyhow, this is our rugby team, and to tell you the truth, we were really good. This guy right here, this will give you some proportion. This guy's 6'7". This guy's 6'4". These guys are massive, but this guy right here, his name's Matt Toohey. Matt Toohey had hair like Brian Bosworth. He weighed about 240 pounds. He was about 6'3", 6'4", and he was the best athlete I've ever seen. And I never was on, like in my high school, we didn't have good linemen. I never was on a team this good. And this was taken after we won the Midwest Championships. Listen to the teams we beat. We beat Ohio State. We throttled them. We beat Miami. We beat Bowling Green. We beat John Carroll, Case Western Reserve. And we were being noticed in the national and also for some players to make the Eagles team, which goes to Europe. He was one of them, Matt Toohey. What we'd do before games is we'd run around the other team, we'd run around the field, and we'd put Matt Toohey in the front, and we'd all run behind him single file, and the other teams would just look at Matt Toohey, and we would make them crumble, you know. It was great. The problem was, after this tournament, a couple of these guys, I won't point them out, decided to have a rugby team party in a university-owned house. That rugby team party was a bad one where they ruined the house and it was like $10,000 to $15,000 of damage. They were kicked off campus. The team had to forfeit any national opportunities. We had no more chance to play. We had all the potential in the world, but we didn't walk worthy of the calling we received. You have all the potential in the world to glorify Christ. Don't forfeit it. Walk worthy. And start by being completely humble and gentle. Ooh, that's hard. It is. But do you believe chapter 1 through 3? Or is it just some nice reading? So you can come to church and say, I can sing of his love forever. Then I go home and I bite everybody's head off. That music meant nothing then. Nothing.